was Wrinkle in Time coming out this week because it's directed by Ava DuVernay, this very respected black woman director who did Selma a couple years back. And then she did a brilliant documentary called, I believe it was 13.
The 13th,
yeah. And anyway, so she casts Oprah Winfrey as one of the three, I don't know what they are, goddesses?
They're kind of omniscient beings who can help you navigate the universe.
Yeah, so I mean, and then the lead girl is a young black actress. And so the thing is that...
And then also Mindy Kaling as well as one of the omniscient beings.
Yeah, Indian-American actress. And so it's like... they also have Reese Witherspoon in there and Chris Pine, who are both white, and then a couple another white boy is the love interest of the lead girl, but they really did a good job of diversifying it because clearly I would assume that back when this was written 50, 60 years ago, Madeleine L'Engle, I don't know if she specified what the races were, but people would back then probably assume they'd all be white, and so that's kind of a cool idea, but. As far as before we get into the faith messages, it's like one thing though I gotta say that Oprah, if there's an Oscar or she could get a Razzie for worst hair and costuming, it's like I'm sorry, no matter how good people might see the movie and I didn't like it, but it's got like a 46% on Rotten Tomatoes. The ones that like it really do like it though. But Oprah, my God, she looks like RuPaul crossed with a Oompa Loompa, in my opinion.
Yeah, the way her costume and her hair set up, it was almost like Halle Berry from X-Men, like got lost on the set and then reemerged 20 years later or something like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of an interesting look, yeah.
Yeah, and this book that was supposedly a Christian allegory, Mindy Kaling appears and she has this big green thing in the middle of her forehead, which in still photos like the poster I notice makes me think of the red dot that normally appears for devout is it Hindu women, I guess?
I think so,
yeah. And so it's kind of strange that they blend all this stuff together, and it seems to me that they took any sort of Christian material and turned it into very broad, new agey kind of stuff, but maybe the book was like that. I mean, I always heard it was Christian allegory. Read it when I was like 10 or 12, so I honestly have no remembrance of what the deeper messages were. But you saw it somewhat more favorably than I did, as far as that goes, right?
Yeah, and so Jim Whittaker, who's one of the producers of the film, he very kindly gave me a phone interview, and I asked him about getting Ava DuVernay on board, and he said that was such a huge get for us. Just because she's very talented, she makes very compelling movies, and she's got a really keen eye, and is just great with emotional storytelling. But B, how inclusive she is, because he said without her, maybe we wouldn't have ended up with as inclusive a cast. This movie is just really, really well timed because it's a movie about a young girl gaining the confidence in herself to be a leader, and the nemesis in the movie is there's kind of this looming darkness as she goes across the universe, and she needs to learn how to fight that darkness by making her own source of light and by being confident in herself, warts and all. And so I thought, especially right now, it's a really good time for not only young girls to see that, but also young boys too. Actually, as Zach Galifianakis pointed out at the press junket, he said it's really good for young boys to see that it's okay to be sensitive and it's okay to not have to be Mr. Macho Man all the time and be willing to let women take leadership roles.
Well, I mean that is a good message. I didn't think about. That I forget. Did the book was the girl the lead character, or did they flip that in any way? Do you have any remembrance?
It was always if I understand correctly, I think it was always a girl as the lead character.
Okay, all right.
But I'm not sure if it was always an interracial couple.
I doubt
that were her parents.
Considering the times, but that's a good thing though that we can move past and not even have that really be an issue. But I mean, I do think I hate saying this and hammer me hard if you think I'm off base here, but I think that some of the hype though for this movie, it got such hype, not just because a classic finally comes to life, but because Oprah got behind it, and then Oprah got Ava involved, and I don't know, to me the script is a mess. And I raved about that or ranted about that on Facebook, and somebody, a nun in the Pauline sisters, Sister Nancy Usselman, who does a lot of public speaking about films and writing about films, she said that she got an early look. I think she was asked to consult on it and said, oh, yeah, because I said, I think maybe this movie was unfilmable, in my opinion, about because it's such a jumbled mess of ideas, in my opinion, but that maybe it was unfilmable, at least in the way they adapted it or something. And she said, yeah, you can't really blame Ava. It's that she thought the script was a disaster and didn't even take the job. She just was like, this is impossible. And so, but I think that it got more hype than it would have otherwise. And maybe that's just common sense that, okay, black woman director getting a blockbuster. So, on the one hand, that is news, and that's great news. On the other hand, I think it set up expectations. The media, I think, gave it a lot more glowing coverage in advance in places like Entertainment Weekly than it might have gotten otherwise without people actually seeing the product. Because Entertainment Weekly did this raving cover about a month or two ago, picking it as an early thing to put on their preview of spring or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then they gave it a C review and said, oh my God, what a mess. And once they actually saw it. So
that's a good point. It could be that people got caught up in the hype before they even saw it. I personally liked it, but what I will say is that there's a lot of broad magical things happening in the universe in this story, and they don't really lead you to water if you haven't read the book. So you'll understand it more if you've read the book.
Okay.
As someone who hadn't read the book, I did kind of find myself sometimes being like, wait, what are they talking about here? What exactly is happening? I eventually figured it. To spell it out for people listening at home who might not be familiar, it's a young girl whose parents are scientists, and one of them becomes really enamored with the idea of trying to travel to the fifth dimension of the universe, and believes that he can do it through an action called tesseracting, which is basically where you find entry points where the universe folds in upon itself. And he disappears mysteriously, and he's gone for 4 years. And 4 years after his disappearance, these omniscient beings show up at the girl's home, and they say, "We know where your father is, and he figured out how to tesseract, and we want you to come with me." I just explained it better there than the movie did in the early going.
You're making it sound coherent,
right?
I don't know.
But with that being said, this really was just such a visual wonder, and I could totally see someone between the age of maybe 7 or 14 or so. There's just some moments in it where you're just like, wow, this is like akin to Never Ending Story or movies like that where visually just kind of takes your breath away.
Well, I mean, yeah, there are a couple good, impressive visual moments. I was, but when one of the characters, let's not give away who, but one of the characters is able to morph into like this flying dragon-like friendly creature, and it reminded me of Avatar because the kids are riding on the back of this thing, but it was cool still. And then it also reminded me of Never Ending Story, but the thing is, my problem is that once I got past that initial flying, and then maybe one other key scene where they have to get this, one of the kids is kind of, his personality is altered in a severe way. We'll leave it at that for those who don't know the story. But the thing is that a lot of the movie to me was like just talking about, you got to save your father. You got to save your father. Mm-hmm. And not actually doing anything. It was like one long, boring scene after another of platitudes from Oprah, or as I like to say, Oprah. And,
you got to go see the wizard. You got to go see the wizard. They're building it up. They're building up the adventure.
But they're not really doing anything. It isn't like as action-packed or eventful, or there's no songs like Wizard of Oz, or I don't know. There's long stretches that just seem to go nowhere to me. Mm-hmm. But by the way, the Tesseract is kind of weird that they keep referring to that. I thought, is that a real thing too? And then I just Googled. It is actually a 4-dimensional analog of the cube. So Madeleine L'Engle took the idea of the Tesseract from an actual scientific thing, I guess. But just a weird. I mean, and also though Oprah kept going. you don't know how to tesserate, or you just got to learn how to tesser. And I'm like, I started thinking this is kind of like the Smurfs. Everything is Smurf this, Smurf that,
Yeah.
Tesser.
Yeah, like they are really set in their ways in the film in terms of the terminology and stuff like that. I think it's pretty fascinating though how something that was written in 1962 thematically can come about today and be as relevant and incisive as it ever was. So from a timing standpoint, I think the messages are great, and yeah, you said how difficult it is to adapt it, and Jim Whittaker, the producer, he was like, yeah, this was thought to be unadaptable, and that's why when we tried it in 2003, like we simply didn't have the technology at the time that we had now. But yeah, sometimes there are really grand scale films that can be lost in translation. Like I remember maybe 10 years or so ago, The Watchmen. I really admired the effort, but it was just such a broad, difficult to adapt story, and it ended up falling flat for me.
Yeah, well, we've got differing opinions on you. You liked it well enough to recommend it, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say especially for preteens. I think there are things to enjoy for everybody, but yeah, I think especially preteens will like this one.
Okay. And I give it a thumbs down, but we'll like Siskel and Ebert, So let's see. Did you see any other movies that are opening this weekend?
There's
like Ringo, Hurricane Heist, Thoroughbreds.
Have not seen any of those yet. Thoroughbreds looks interesting to me because I really like dark comedy.
Yeah,
and that one looks like it's going to be pitch black.
It's like a high school movie that the tradition of Heathers and things like that.
Right. Yeah. It's a daring genre, and not a lot of people try it anymore. So when I see people try it, and especially when they succeed with it, it's a really cool thing.
Yeah. That said, it's probably not best for teenagers actually, but
right.
Even though it's aimed sort of at them, but definitely an R-rated movie from what I can tell. But might be worth seeing if you're old enough and unfazed. So. Then I guess another thing that aims at teenagers is the Freeform network. Largely, they do that. So, what are they doing tonight? You brought up an interesting development about their channel.
Yeah. So as we're recording this, it is International Women's Day. And in order to celebrate that on Freeform, whenever a female character in a program that they're broadcasting says the word sorry, they're going to bleep it out. And that is in line with this trending hashtag, what is it, not sorry anymore, or I'm not sorry, something like that, which is it's encouraging women to not apologize or not feel like they need to be apologetic for sexual harassment and when it's done onto them, and have this need to be silent, and that's okay to speak up and point out when wrongdoing has occurred. Yeah,
well, the thing is that people of all types can say sorry all the time. I mean, I'm notorious for it until I started going to a shrink in the past year and developed finally some healthy self-esteem for the first time in my godforsaken life. I said sorry all the time. I remember teachers telling me, don't say sorry so much. I'd be like, oh, sorry. Anyway, I don't know. I think it's a good message for people to a point, but then if you think, it might also foster the idea too far the other way. No, that do whatever you want. Don't ever apologize. I mean, that's not good either.
Well, I don't think they're saying that so much as that. I think what they're probably going for is for people to watch the programs and be like, "Oh, what's this all about?" And then they look it up and see what they're talking about. I think it's more just to draw attention to it.
Yeah, they're saying that they're doing it on their shows. I thought maybe it was like old shows that they're putting together. Like it'd be kind of funny to show like old shows that really were kind of stepping on women,
right? Yeah,
who, overly too much apologetic. But it sounds like their current lineup. They said the show's Grownish, Shadowhunters, The Fosters, and The Bold Type will all have their sorries bleeped out. So I wonder if they plan this ahead. And if these are past episodes or new episodes, and did they go out of their way to say a bunch of sorries? So it's like bleep, bleep, bleep,
right?
Bleep,
or did they make sure that in the plot of any of them they're playing the board game sorry, and then
it's
like when they pull the board, just bleep out the title of the board game.
Turn it hazy,
turn it hazy.
Yeah, I mean, it could be interesting, but I'm not going to be hanging around to see them bleep out the word sorry. I don't know.
Right.
But, but I think it's an interesting idea. And, I think there's some parents out there that might be listening probably wish that the networks would channels would bleep a lot more language these days. It's really loosened up the last few years.
There are a lot of sitcoms on CBS